Hey guys, it's Silver Snorlax, and I am back with part 3, the final part for PSA Returns Round 17. That huge stack of PSA cards is just one order. And that's why I've been saving it for last. There's a lot to go over. It accounts for not quite half of the order, but pretty close to it. It's about 30-some cards. I don't have an exact number, but it's around that range. These were submitted by user Thor Gene. I'll have a link to his channel in the description. Please, by all means, go ahead and check him out. I'm sure he's in the market to sell at least a couple of these if you're interested. So all kinds of stuff to go over. As I had mentioned in part 1 is qualifiers. That's something I will be covering in this video, as we have a card that came through with a qualifier. So when we hit that point, we'll start to talk about it. But for the time being, I want to go ahead and I don't want to blaze through this, but I want to start to get into it a little bit. We'll start talking about some of the cards that came in. First card up, Misty's Tentacruel, Mint 9. First edition. Let's see, was that Gym Heroes? Misty in the corner there. Yeah, that's how you know it's Gym Heroes. Great card. Rocket's Moltres. This one came back as near Mint 7. And he sent a second Moltres that came back as Mint 9. Both of those were first edition, by the way. Something I should say about these cards, a lot of them, the grades were fairly, I don't want to say like straight 9s or anything, but he had a lot of mixture of different things. But a lot of them were in fact 9s. But you'll see he's got all kinds of stuff in this particular round. So not to take away from it, but we'll keep moving through it. Rocket's Mewtwo. Get that camera to focus. First edition, Gem Mint 10. Great card. Love this card. Would love to own this card, as a matter of fact. It's really nice. Near Mint 8, Rocket Zapdos. Another Near Mint 8 Charizard. This is from Plasma Storm. Oh, come on, camera, focus for me. There we are. Pretty common Charizard that we see when it's Near Mint 8. You'll notice that top border is a heck of a lot thinner than this bottom border. That's where the Near Mint 8 grade comes in. That level of centering will in fact downgrade you a little bit. Blaine's Charizard, Near Mint 8, first edition. And if you look closely enough, and if I can get this camera to focus, which we seem to already be having issues, you'll see where it says Roaring Flames. It says discard all. Look closely. That is the fighting symbol energy. This was a mistake that was made with a number of Blaine's Charizards. There are a couple that are corrected, and to be honest, I forget which one's much more rare. I believe it's the corrected version where that doesn't have a fighting energy, it's the fire energy, but regardless, that's a pretty cool error, the fact that it has that fighting energy on there. Next, I believe he pulled this card himself. I forget if he did or not. I think he told me in PM. This is a Near Mint 8 Unlimited Charizard. He had graded. I believe he pulled it himself, so that's pretty cool. Next, everybody's favorite Machamp, the first edition from base set. You'll know it's one that was printed a little bit later. It has that shadowed border on the right-hand side. This is one of the ones that you would get in the starter decks. Very, very common. A ton of these were printed. Great card nonetheless, though. I love that Generation 1 look. That artwork and everything else about it is just phenomenal. Next, Mint 9 Aerodactyl. First edition from Fossil. One of my favorite Pokemon ever. Gengar from Fossil. Mint 9, first edition. Moltres, holographic, Near Mint 8, first edition card. Muck, one of the most common cards in the Fossil set. This one came back as a Mint 9, first edition. Kingdra, we're running into Neogenesis here. First edition came back as Near Mint 8. Card I own myself, actually. I forget if it's first edition or not, but it would be graded much lower if it was. First edition Dark Alakazam. Actually buying this card myself in a Gem Mint 10 format from a buddy of mine soon, so hopefully that goes well for me. Dark Arbok, first edition. Dark Blastoise, first edition, came back as Near Mint 7. Dark Dugtrio, Rocket, Gem Mint 10, scored real high for him. Like I've said before, I'm a huge fan of the Rocket set, so awesome to see some of these cards come back with such a high grade on them. That includes his Rocket Dark Gyarados, also a first edition holographic, Gem Mint 10 there. Dark Magneton Mint 9, first edition. You can see the silhouette of a human being, theoretically Giovanni. Always thought that was a really cool card. Once I realized what that shadow was, I always thought it was really cool. And I find it interesting that Dark Magneton either does not cast a shadow or he casts a shadow somewhere farther back. That's cool. Dark Slowbro Mint 9, first edition. Dark Weezing. That came back as a Gem Mint 10 form. I believe he got, if it's not the entire Rocket set, it's pretty close to it. Came back as either 7, 8, 9, or 10. He sent a number of Rocket cards off, I remember that much. Here comes Team Rocket Trainer. It's a first edition one, that's a Mint 9. Rainbow Energy, also part of the Rocket set. First edition. One of the most beautiful energy cards, I believe, in all of the printed sets of Pokemon. I love how that looks. It's very colorful, yet it's very dark. I think that there's something beautiful to be said about that. I think that's really cool. Next, Stark Raichu. This one came back as an Excellent Mint 6. This is a first edition Excellent Mint 6. And he had a second one graded as well. Came back as a Near Mint 8 for him. So if he didn't score big with one, he kind of made up with the other. Moving right along. Last couple I have here to go over. So I Japanese Mewtwo's Rocket Holo. Gym 2. Cool artwork there. I love Mewtwo. Mewtwo's one of my favorite Pokemon. He always looks so powerful every time I see him. Every time he's either drawn or the way he's illustrated, it's fantastic. I love Mewtwo. Raichu level X. Came back as Mint 9. Card I've seen him come through a couple times. Generally does pretty well. Move this card away. I'm going to cover that card last. But we'll focus right now on Sabrina's Alakazam. Came back as a Near Mint 8. Japanese Rocket Zapdos Mint 9. Beautiful artwork here. Very cool. And a couple of cards that came back very high. This is a Gym 2 Blaine's Charmeleon. And a Gym 2 Erica's Ivysaur. Alright, and last card I kind of hid from you guys a little bit. This is a Blaine's Arcanine, probably one of my favorite cards ever, English or Japanese. Just the way that Arcanine is put together, how that holographic background looks. Now, I talked about qualifiers at the start of this video, and I'll finally get a chance to cover it because this card has qualifier. You'll notice on that label, it gives it a Mint 9 reading, but you'll see in parentheses it says OC. What is OC? Why is it there? Why is it next to the grade? This is probably the first card I've reviewed out of the... I've probably sent 1,000 cards to PSA and put on camera. This is probably the first one I've had that's actually had a qualifier. Basically, PSA will grade nearly every card submitted. Cards having significant flaws will receive qualified grades, and off-centered is one of them. So I got to kind of clarify here. Cards that are considered flawed does not necessarily drop their value. As a matter of fact, some people actually look for off-centered cards. Some people look for cards with severe printing defects because they think they're a cool thing to collect. There's a couple of different things that go into a card that is considered flawed, or at least from PSA standpoint. So there are a couple different things that actually qualify a card for these different qualifiers. OC stands for off-centered. In some cases, those parentheticals will say ST, that stands for staining. PD, that stands for printing defect. That's a card that really looks different than what it should look like. Staining is a little bit different. That tends to do with something with the waxy level. If that qualifier says OF, means out of focus. You guys can kind of figure out what that is. MK means marks, MC means miscut, and that's another big one. A lot of people will look for miscut cards. That's a big one for some people who buy specific cards. But off-centered qualifiers are kind of interesting because what PSA does is they look at the card and they say, okay, where is it centered? And they look at the borders and they figure out where the exact middle of the card, and they give you some leeway. They give you, I believe, for PSA 9, it has to be like I forget the exact number. They have standards on their site if you wanted to look at it, but I believe it's something like a 60-40 split or a 65-35 split. And then what actually qualifies the card is whether or not the eye appeal is still good. So if this card was off-centered but it didn't look that way, they may not necessarily add the qualifier to it. It's kind of an interesting thing, and that's where human error can kind of occur. That's what makes grading a little more subjective, more so than anything else, is when the qualifiers are involved. When a PSA card is graded 9, 10, whatever, there's already certain standards and benchmarks in place. PSA does not hate you if they grade all your cards low. There is a reason for it. And they, like I know for a fact, if your card is creased anywhere on the card, you automatically get bumped to a PSA 6 or below. It doesn't matter about any other fact. Your card could be flawless otherwise, but if it's creased somewhere, you've automatically dropped it to a 6. That's a simple benchmark or a standard they have in place for these. So I think that's something very interesting to cover. I would like to cover a whole video explaining qualifiers and what they actually mean. Unfortunately, they're very rare with Pokemon cards. Pokemon cards are printed in a much more modern era. A lot of things that can happen to cards generally don't. For example, miscuts are very hard to come by. Off-center cards are also hard to come by. You can still find them, certainly. You can still certainly buy them if you're willing to pay for them, but they're much harder to find. Back in like the 1960s, 50s, 70s, that whole era of years and years ago, baseball cards in particular, it was not unusual to have a card that was miscut or whatever, because the way their printing processes were set up were much, much different from ours now. They didn't have a computer necessarily to print everything. So that's something that's very different and something that kind of separates Pokemon cards a little bit. Final note I'm going to say for this particular round, this Arcanine, you will see it again because Thor Gene, the gentleman who submitted these cards, is actually allowing me to keep this card, and I will likely end up putting this thing up in a giveaway video. As a number of people who submit cards to me, it's not unusual now to see them submit a card, they'll pay for the grading, and they'll say, hey, why don't you hang on to that and use it as a giveaway or do whatever you like with it. And that's what I like to do, is I like to give them back to you guys in form of a giveaway or something like that. I think it's awesome. There's so many people committed to adding a little bit to the community. I think that's fantastic. So I encourage that behavior quite a bit. Don't send cards in for me to keep because I won't. I'll just resubmit them out to the general community, so you guys can have a little part of PSA and a little part of graded glory, if you will. So there's lots of fun to be had with grading, and I'm very appreciative that this card was actually sent to me, and very appreciative of the fact that I got to talk about qualifiers finally. It's really never come up. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Like I'll mention at the end of these videos, I do grading year-round. If you're interested in contacting the gentleman with these cards, the link is in the description. You will see another upload again from me soon. I'm not sure when yet, but you'll definitely see something from me in the future. So hey, thanks a lot for watching, guys. New upload again soon.